Hey everyone, I'm really excited to share this altered paintbrush today. I did this with the July 2023 Jolie mixed media kit. So the mixed media kit came with the paintbrush that you see there and the two paper mache stars and some inks or dyes, I should say, to do some coloring with. So I started out the same way that I like to start most of these videos, which is adding gesso to the paintbrush. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know I like to take whatever it is I'm trying to show you and take it all the way off camera and paint it. But I'm going to do the best I can uh, in, in this video to keep everything in the view of the camera. So the stars I thought were really cool, and I decided that instead of doing what I normally do with these paintbrushes, I decided I'd put one of the stars at the top of the paintbrush eventually and use the string that's already attached to the stars to use as a hanger instead of just hanging the paintbrush on a nail, whatever else I have hanging around on my wall. So a couple of things. The last couple of months I haven't been able to do much crafting. I had a couple of surgeries that I had to go through, and then I was out of state for work for about 10 weeks. And I also just bought a new house. So I've got to figure out in my new craft room here how I'm going to do the lighting for these videos. But also my gesso was a little thick, so I ended up having to add some water to it. Now I'm starting to put some of those colors or dyes that came with the mixed media kit, just kind of sporadically dripping them on the paintbrush. And then I decided to use other paintbrushes to kind of paint some of the dye on the stars themselves. I think my favorite thing about altered paintbrushes is that you can just sit there and layer color upon color, and don't worry, the irony of painting a paintbrush has never been lost on me, but yeah. So other than knowing that I wanted to use at least one of the stars at the top of the paintbrush, I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go with this project. I knew pretty early on that I was going to need to add in some other colors, so I ran over to my stash and grabbed 3 Lindy's sprays that are in similar colors to the dyes that came with the kit. So I've got a blue, a purple, and kind of a golden yellow there too. The blue one's flat Fabio, but the other two are starburst colors, so they've got a little bit more of a shimmer to them. And I was pretty excited to finally get to do my first project in my new house. So instead of letting things air dry like I normally like to do, I used my heat gun quite a bit on this project. I had this chipboard in my stash that was from an earlier Trader Lee kit, and it's some of their black chipboard, which I really like because even though I went ahead and put gesso on it, it just seems that with the darker chipboard, it takes colors a little easier maybe than regular chipboard. And once everything got fairly dry on the front, I was able to turn my stars over, go ahead and paint the back side of them, mostly on camera. I'm really proud of myself so far in this video. And get the other one colored in there. And then I'm just kind of doing the same thing on, I say the back side, but I didn't know until the end of the project which was the front side of the stars and which was the back side of the stars. That's pretty par for the course too, I'd say. A little clean up there. And now we're painting the other side of the paintbrush. So one thing I've learned since I've been in this new house, and just fun fact, the room that is most set up and put together right now is definitely the craft room. But I've determined that I might be getting close to having too many flowers. I now have 4 full drawers of flowers. So even though this mixed media kit didn't come with any flowers, I was already going through my drawers in between letting chipboard and the stars and the paintbrush dry, trying to figure out which flowers I wanted to use. And I really liked that color of the Lindy's Starburst spray, but in with having not crafted in a while, my mister wasn't working too well, so most of that color ended up having to be applied with a brush. So I added a little bit of crackle paste here on the paintbrush. And I wanted to go pretty thick with the crackle paste because I did want some of those deep cracks on the paintbrush and kind of make it look like maybe the paintbrush had been uh, used heavily for, oh, I don't know, a painting project, even though we all know that's not the case. So, and then I added just a little bit to the stars also and kind of have that little bit of a texture effect there too. Usually I like to go ahead and color my crackle glaze before I let it dry, but I decided to try to do something a little different with this and let it dry about halfway and then add some color to it and see how much of the color would actually seep into the cracks of the glaze. And so there I am, just adding a little bit of that color. The blue mist for a flat color was actually a really nice effect, I thought, on this project. Something else I've learned since moving into this house and getting my new craft room set up and going through boxes of, 2 moves in the last year and whatnot, I've discovered, as we'll see here in a second, that I have duplicates of a lot of things. Duplicates of flowers. I'm almost out of crackle glaze. I think I've only got 6 jars left, and that was a little bit of sand texture medium there. I have 4 jars of that, some of which have never been opened before. So it looks like maybe my next couple of projects are going to be very heavily textured. I wanted to use a paintbrush for some of the sand texture paste because I wanted to have a little bit of a stippling effect with it. But I also really just like taking my finger to it and kind of getting the little kind of bumpy waves, for lack of a better term. And then I decided I would just use some of the white paint and dye mixtures that I'd made off to the side there and do a little bit of finger painting this weekend. I did not use gesso when I mixed the dyes with the paint. Instead, I just used regular white paint. And one thing that happens when you do that is you get a lot thinner of a paint, so you almost kind of have a color whitewash effect going. But it also makes those colors, which are the dyes were really, really vibrant, but it also kind of makes them pastel. And I've done that before with shimmery paint too, and that was a really interesting effect. I kind of ended up with a pastel shimmery paint. So I'm looking forward to doing some more projects using that technique in the future. And back to the chipboard again. I really just kind of went in a circle most of the time with this project because I wanted some colors to stand out on some pieces of the project, but I wanted everything to really flow together well, and I wanted to make sure that those different shades of the blues, purples, and yellows were all kind of blending together. And I think it turned out to be a pretty nice effect in the end. And again, just a personal preference. I don't typically like to use my heat gun to speed up the drying of mediums on my projects. It's just a personal preference, but I really was so excited to get into my craft room and make something. So I decided, I got the bright idea there to dip the end of the paintbrush into some of that leftover paint off to the side. An unintended effect of using my heat gun as much as I did on the paintbrush was that it did kind of fry the end of the bristles a little bit. But I really kind of like how that turned out too because it just kind of gave it an older and more used effect. And here we are just adding a couple of more layers of paint onto these stars. Again, there is not a snowball's chance in Hades that I'm going to run out of things to color and layer on top of any of my projects for the time being. So the more the merrier in this case. A little more heat gun action there. I was definitely overzealous. I thought I could get this project done in one day, and you'll see towards the end of the video, there's an outfit change. So that means I had to save the rest of it for the next day. But all in all, a good time was had by everyone, I think. And here I am just wanting to add a few more layers of something. Wasn't really sure what, and then I decided it was going to be some more of those dyes. I'd also like to point out that one of the colors is marigold, and it's just a deep golden yellow, which is definitely one of my favorite colors to craft with. So I did try to use it a little more prominently, and definitely after mixing with the white paint and getting the pastel effect, I wanted to go back over with some of the other colors in their more pure form to get a little bit of a deeper effect. Heat gun, heat gun, heat gun. I tell you what. So another thing I've got to work on in this new room, in addition to the lighting, I've got to figure out what my camera did to reset its settings that I had it on last time. But we'll get everything back into view. We'll get it worked out. The next project should be a lot better. I felt like I was getting pretty close at this point, but also knew it was getting later in the day, and I knew that I knew I wasn't going to be able to finish in time, or finish in one day, I should say. So I decided that I'd put as much color and ink and dye and spray and paint on this as I wanted to, because I knew that I was probably about to wrap it up and go to bed for a little bit. And then you can see just kind of checking the chipboard there to make sure that it's going to stand out okay on the paintbrush when I get it put on there. The chipboard was interesting. It was the only piece of chipboard that I had that had stars on it, but it also had some gears on it. Have no fear. When I unpacked all of my boxes, I realized that I had plenty of gears that I could add to the paintbrush too. So here we are, day 2, outfit change, and just getting ready to put everything together, glue it all down. Put a little bit of soft gel medium on the paintbrush where the chipboard was going to go. And then Old Faithful, old reliable hot glue gun there for some real sticking power. The back of the star had a little point that just about perfectly fit into the hole of the paintbrush, so that really kind of helped it get in there and be stuck down well. And I didn't realize at first actually how big these stars were, and I was kind of afraid that the second star was going to take over the paintbrush, but I think you'll see at the end, I think it turned out okay. And I did go ahead and cut that other string off of that other star there before I put it on. Heaven forbid that somebody not realize they should hang the paintbrush from the top of it and try to hang from that second star. And now it's time to start sticking the flowers down. All of the flowers I used came from my stash. And like I said, I almost have enough flowers now, so it is currently my goal to make sure that no matter what, I use at least a couple of flowers from my stash every time I make a project. And maybe that will prevent me from having to get a 5th drawer to put flowers in. But I guess if we need to get a 5th drawer, we can go that route as well. And these are some little miniature roses, I believe from Rene Bouquet. And I like them because they stand up on their end and kind of add a little bit of extra dimension to some of these projects. And here I am using flowers from my stash. In case you can't tell, that's actually 2 packages of the same flower in a single bag, or two packages of the same mix of flowers. And I ended up only using 1 flower, but I did use a couple of the petals or leaves from those flowers, and I think that counts when it comes to using flowers from my stash. And as always, just doing a little work off camera there so that we can all be curious about what I'm doing. So these are some Rene Bouquet beautiful beads. I think the color is By the Sea. Had a really interesting mix of blue and gold tones and a little bit of pink. And I was doing the best I could to keep pink almost entirely out of this paintbrush because somewhere in the last couple of years, pink has started finding its way into almost everything I make. But when I glued the beautiful beads down, I just made sure to try to have the gold or blue sides facing a little more prominently. And there's a couple of those little gears that I found in my stash. And now it's time to start putting the beads on. Even though this was a smaller paintbrush, when I pulled the beads out and got the ones that I wanted to use on the project, I only used the larger and medium sized beads because I was afraid that if I only used the smaller ones, I wouldn't be able to get those blue and yellow sides facing up, but also I was afraid they might kind of get lost in the project. So I wanted the beautiful beads to kind of stand out just a little bit. Just add a few more there. And last but not least, taking that purple Lindy's Starburst spray again and just kind of making some splatters across my lighter colored flowers and a little bit of the chipboard that still had the ability to soak up some color. And there you have it, all complete. Here's a couple of close-ups. See some of the beautiful beads on one of the flowers there, and the chipboard. And that's it. Thanks for watching. See you soon.